An epidemic of the scale of the one in 1348 devastated Italy and Europe, wiping out about a third of the population and leaving behind immense pain and suffering. The social and economic landscapes were profoundly altered as communities grappled with the loss and sought to rebuild in the aftermath. When the epidemic ends, people find themselves facing a surplus of housing, buildings, businesses, and goods. The valuables and currency remain unchanged, it's simply that there were fewer people to share them. This shift created opportunities for those who survived, leading to significant economic and social transformations. When I reopen my shop after the epidemic, my competitor is gone, allowing me to start fresh and maybe even have an edge. However, the plague returns 10 years later, making recovery difficult and inconsistent. The crucial takeaway is that the population has decreased significantly, and in this demographic shift has a lasting and structural consequence that can be ignored. Imagine the typical wool industrialist eager to restart the wool industry after the epidemic. In medieval cities, the wool industry is organized on a large scale, though it lacks machinery. Aside from some hydraulic presses powered by rivers and canals, instead of factories with concentrated workers, there are entrepreneurs who manage the process. These industrialists import wool in bulk from southern Italy, Spain, and later England, navigating the landscape transformed by the population shifts and economic opportunities created by the aftermath of the plague. Now, imagine what happens when the owner reopens and tries to contact the workers. The first person he looks for doesn't respond. He's dead. The second worker says, "I'm ready to work." The first person he looks for doesn't respond. He's dead. The second worker says, "I'm ready to work again, but I want 12 coins a day instead of the 10 you used to pay." The owner, frustrated, replies, "Forget it, you scoundrel, always trying to take in advantage." Moving on, he finds the next worker is also dead, and the one after that says, I've already been hired by a competitor who's paying 13 coins a day." This highlights the shifting power dynamics in the labor market post-epidemic, where surviving workers have the leverage to negotiate better wages. At this point, the typical response from the owners is not just to grumble about the crisis and demands of their workers, but to strategize. They approach local authorities and request laws to cap wages, limiting what competitors can pay. By doing so, they aim to stabilize their costs and maintain control over the labor market. If employers want to attract workers, they must comply with these new regulations, reshaping the economic landscape as competition intensifies for a diminished workforce. In the countryside, landowners are in panic mode, literally pulling their hair out, because they're facing severe shortages of labor after so many deaths. Demand for produce has dwindled and leading to fluctuations in the market. In good years, occasionally booms occur, but in bad years, grain yields drop, causing prices to skyrocket. Meanwhile, during the better years, laborers are demanding higher wages than ever before, putting even more pressure on landowners trying to run their business. This forces them to rethink their strategies in a rapidly shifting economy. Before the plague, you can find the town square filled with unemployed people looking for work for little money, much like today's immigrants in some places. But now that scene has changed. There are fewer workers, and those who are willing to work demand higher pay. While landowners are initially furious, they eventually start offering better wages. As a result, laborers in the 14th and 15th centuries, extending into the early 16th centuries, find themselves earning more than their ancestors did, marking a significant shift in the labor market. What do workers do with their newfound earnings? First and foremost, they can finally eat until full and eat well. It wasn't like that before. With their daily wages, they can afford bread and soup, ensuring everyone is satisfied. After everyone is satisfied, if the worker has a bit money left over, what does he do? If I would ask you a question, what the worker would do, a middle-aged worker would do with the leftover money, what would you answer? Invest? Well, no, he doesn't invest. He goes to the tavern. He goes to the tavern and drinks wine, and the wine trade thrives, while grain, as I mentioned, is flourishing. New taverns open, and they are always full of customers, and wine producers notice that the business is booming. The city wants wine and brings in more and more of it. When the worker returns home in the evening, his wife checks his pockets and finds some more money left. So what do? On Sundays, they indulge in meat. Sometimes even on Saturdays. This wasn't possible before. It was unthinkable. But now they can afford it. Historical tax records from an Italian city at the end of the 14th century show a surge in butcheries. In fact, there were more butcheries in places like Asti or Alessandria in the 15th century than there are today. They primarily consumed sheep, while the wealthier enjoyed beef. Still not bad at all. Meat became a staple and butchers thrived. Livestock farmers also reaped the benefits as demand for meat continued to grow in the cities. At this point, landowners in the countryside start to reassess their choices. They think, why should I keep producing grain? This isn't selling well and requires extensive labor. Instead, they convert grain fields into pastures for livestock. However, pastures need irrigation. A dry pasture isn't productive. To achieve multiple hay harvests, they need to invest in irrigation. This means enhancing existing canals, as there had already been significant efforts throughout the Middle Ages to dig irrigation channels and improve soil fertility. But starting in the 14th century, this investment in irrigation takes a leap forward. Political initiatives also play a role. Large canals are constructed under government orders, expanding the network of ditches and waterways. This leads to more pastures, marshlands, and livestock. Some begin to think, why not produce cheese? Previously, cheese was made only in the mountainous regions, in the Alps. But by the Renaissance, it starts to appear in the plains as well. In Piacenza, a delicious cheese called Piacentino emerges, which I suppose you always have tried, because let me tell you, which even the sultans buy. It gets shipped to Constantinople, and as Piacenza becomes part of Parma, the cheese changes name, and everyone starts calling it Parmigiano. It sounds familiar, but originally the name Piacentino. Thus, the Po Valley begins to thrive as a cheese-producing region. Imagine the Po Valley as this river Po goes through it, and is one of the most fertile lands in Italy, actually. Those who recognize these trends, like the growth in vineyards and wine production, begin to profit. In the evenings, after a long day in the fields, workers return from the tavern and their wives save any leftover money in a piggy bank. By year's end, they have some savings. What do? They don't invest again. They head to the cloth merchant and buy a decent outfit. Previously, the poor wore rough, home-woven fabrics. Now, with money to spend, they want something better. They don't seek luxurious velvets or silk meant for the wealthy, but they do look for durable quality cloth. This shift allows textile production centers like Florence, which focus on luxury goods, to survive. But it also sparks the rise of new centers dedicated to producing affordable, low-quality cloth. Cities in the Po Valley and Piemonte start to thrive. Wool producers form guilds with regulations stating their cloth must be priced affordably, targeting this emerging market. It's important to note that these changes come only after a significant population decline. While there are reasons to be optimistic, we must also consider the serious implication of such loss, death, and devastation. When the population was halved due to the plague, the remaining people found themselves with more resources per capita, which allowed them to thrive in that context. The economy and social structure adapted to the new reality, creating opportunities for those who survived. Well, you might ask, wow, depopulation is a good thing after all. Well, not so fast, different times. All these theories we hear today about the positive aspects or the benefits of depopulation come from this philosopher, Thomas Robert Malthus, an English cleric and scholar known for his influential ideas on population growth. Malthus is best known for his work in 1798, an essay on the principle of population, where he argued that population tends to grow exponentially while food production grows at an arithmetic rate. This imbalance, he suggested, would lead to resource scarcity, famine, and societal struggle unless checked by factors like disease, war, or moral restraint, which he classifies as positive checks on population growth. While the halving of the population in the Middle Ages led to a resurgence of abundance for those who remained, it's clearly important to state that today's world presents a different scenario. In contrast, today's world, with its advanced technology and larger population, operates under different dynamics where abundance can be maintained even with population growth. With our advanced agricultural technologies and food production methods, we have the capacity to support larger population than ever before. Furthermore, a larger population can bring forward more brilliant minds capable of solving humanity's pressing issues. This growth, coupled with innovation, can lead to solutions that address the challenges we face today and in the future. A Malthusian perspective, which suggests that population growth inevitably leads to resource depletion and catastrophe, would not be beneficial for the world. The Malthusian philosophy is problematic because it underestimates humanity's capacity for innovation, particularly in agriculture and resource management, by presenting a deterministic view that suggests that famine and scarcity are inevitable things, and it can stifle creativity and discourage proactive problem solving. This perspective can also lead to harmful policies that prioritize population control over sustainable development. History shows that society can adapt and thrive despite challenges, making a Malthusian outlook overly pessimistic and counterproductive to progress. Well, if there's one story that you can take out of this lesson here, would be that the human spirit thrives and it becomes stronger, it becomes more innovative. Despite the challenges of the various pandemics of the past, what we have learned is that we're better equipped to face adversities in the future and also to become resourceful people that try to gain advantage, creating and shaping a new world after the disaster, after the death. So we come out of it stronger, that we've learned something from it. And as much as I would like to say the same thing as our recent past 4 years with COVID-19, while health agencies and governments have, pharmaceutical companies have put unduly stress on the population to be subject to an experimental forms of vaccination. Vaccines are positive. I'm not abdicating for the responsibilities for one side or the other, but for sure we've come out of it stronger, even with some slight condemnation that we have against some forms of authoritarian parties and politicians that have caused more harm than good with the different methodologies imposed on the populace. But despite that, we have come out, I suppose I would say, stronger, however more skeptical toward some authorities, and that makes many people the distinction between free thinkers and those who are apt to follow. Well, this is all for me today, and if you liked what the lesson, what you hear, what you see, or if you have any ideas or comments or questions, fill out the comments below and drop a like and consider subscribing if you like. And I really do enjoy doing this work, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.